with the technique, then don't use it until you are. You simply need to be responsible for your own well-being. So I'm teaching you this technique first, because without knowing how to release negative emotions or limiting beliefs, your intentional work with the law of attraction simply can't work how you want it to. So when you use any technique, visualization or otherwise, to get into resonance with something, you've got to be ready with a way to release the resistance that shows up in the form of statements like, I can't do this, or this is impossible, and all the rest of those. Because just pushing the emotion back down or trying to ignore it will not diminish the impact of that energy system. It's running, whether you're consciously acknowledging it or not. Now let me just say this about releasing in general. Again, this is something we can all do. The ability to release negative emotions is part of our nature, but we've simply been cut off from this knowledge. But in my experience, the more you release, the more you know what it feels like, which makes spontaneous release possible in more and more situations over time. Again, that's our true nature. Creative beings who can literally attract, through intention, the experience of reality. But keeping the channel clear for the delivery of an intended reality requires the ongoing releasing of resistance. That is, the thoughts or feelings that it can't be done. So let's get into EFT a little. I won't get into the full history of the process because that information is readily available elsewhere. And I do want to acknowledge that this is a process created by Gary Craig, and over the years, as the method has been taught, practitioners, both professional and just everyday users, have created various versions of Gary Craig's technique. Now what I'm going to show you is how I use it, which was the result of working with several practitioners over the years and seeing what worked best for me. As you work on it and study it in its purest form, you'll soon see how to make it work best for you. In any case, for the purposes of this webinar, my approach will give you a general idea of how the process works and hopefully give you some experience with results. It's helpful to understand that energy runs through our bodies along meridians. There are 6 of these meridians on each side of the body, and then one along the front and one along the back. And when we experience resistance, the flow of this energy is disrupted. Now, EFT is based on the centuries-old practice of Chinese acupuncture, but instead of using needles to activate certain points along the body's meridians, we tap with our fingertips. Now, this tapping helps eliminate any imbalance in the energy system, and that brings things back to normal. So if you're having an upset and your energy and information is affected as a result, then tapping along certain points along the meridians has been shown to produce really remarkable effects because energy is flowing properly again, and then you return to a sense of well-being and everything that goes with it. It can be better health, better moods, lots of things. The general idea is that you tune in to the negative emotion that comes up for you when you hit resistance, and then you do the tapping while you're feeling the emotion, not later trying to remember an upset that you had earlier in the day. So a lot of people have questions about tuning into a negative emotion when working with the law of attraction because they don't want to attract anything negative and they think it's counterintuitive. Well, the thing is, the resistance is there anyway. It's having its impact just running beneath the surface. What you're doing with release techniques is bringing the emotion up and then out, sometimes permanently. So you're not wallowing in your negative feelings. You're bringing them up and then doing this process on top of them. So that facilitates the release of this particular energy so that it no longer has any kind of impact on you. So before you do anything, you want to gauge the intensity of your upset on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being extremely upset and 0 having no upset at all. It's really important to do this because sometimes a round of EFT causes subtle shifts at first. And if you don't have a scale by which to measure your emotional progress, it's easy to erroneously think that nothing happened. So always take the time to put a number on your upset before you start. For example, if you don't feel like you're good enough, how strongly do you believe that? Is it a 10? Do you really feel you're not good enough? So that's your starting point. Now we begin the process with what's called a setup phrase. And the setup phrase goes something like this. And again, you'll hear different practitioners do it differently. But you'll start by tapping on what's called the karate chop point and saying this. Even though I'm feeling, and then you say what you're feeling. For example, even though I'm not good enough for this kind of success, I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway. So you do that 3 times, tapping the entire time on that karate chop point. Then you'll move into what we call a round of EFT. And you'll start with the eyebrow point. And we tap this point gently with 1 or 2 fingers while stating something called the reminder phrase. Now, the reminder phrase helps us to stay tuned in to that emotion. Now, it might be something as simple as just repeating, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. Or something more elaborate like, I've never been good enough. That's what they always said, okay? The key is that the reminder phrase really gets you tuned into your upset as clearly as possible, okay? You really want to bring forth as much of this emotion as you can as you start the releasing. So we'll tap the eyebrow point about 7 or 8 times, and then we'll move on to the next point, which is the side of the eye. Okay, and you'll continue to use the reminder phrase to keep you tuned into the feeling associated with this resistance. I'm not good enough. I've never been good enough. Everybody always said I wasn't good enough. The next point is under the eye. Okay, and you can also play around with the wording and the emotion related to the reminder phrases. For example, this feels so real. This belief that I'm not good enough feels so real. I remember what they said. Okay? Then under the nose is the next spot, just like this. A reminder phrase. It made me so angry when they said that. The next point is above the chin. It's right here. I still feel that way sometimes, that I'm not good enough. Then you move on to the collarbone point, which is right here where you can feel sort of a little U right around your collarbone on top of either of the top points of the U. You just tap there. I wonder if I could let that belief go. I wonder if I could let that feeling go. Maybe it isn't true after all. So you see we're going from positive statements to negative statements and back again. Then under the arm, maybe about 4 inches below the armpit. I mean, other people make money doing what I'm passionate about. Okay, so reminder phrases like that just are all around the topic of this emotion that comes up for you. And then finally, on top of the head, kind of a small circular motion. And then say something like, starting right now, I choose to believe that's possible for me. Success is possible for me. Okay, then you take a deep breath. And that's 1 round of EFT. Then you want to check in with your level of intensity. If you started at a 10, how would you gauge it now? Has it gone down at all? Now, ideally, you want to keep going with it until you bring it down to a 0. Just do another round. And as far as this webinar goes, we won't be doing multiple rounds, but it is something I want you to do when you're doing all of this on your own after the webinar. So again, in a nutshell, gauge your intensity, 0 to 10, karate chop with a setup phrase, even though I'm feeling whatever, I deeply and completely love and accept myself, and then a reminder phrase or a series of reminder phrases as you tap the remaining points. And then you take a deep breath, check your intensity level. That's EFT in a nutshell. Now, so that you can have a deeper understanding of all of this, I'm providing you, along with this webinar, a much fuller explanation of what EFT is all about from Master EFT practitioner Carol Look, along with a recording of many different EFT sessions guided by Carol that you can tap along with at your convenience. These sessions will change your life if you use them, because they go through so many different areas of resistance that are very common in people with regards to abundance and health and many other things. Going through these recordings can help make this whole attraction thing so much quicker. So please make use of these resources after this webinar. Okay, we're ready to start. So the first thing is getting clear on what you want. And here's where you're going to do a little writing. I want you to write down something you'd like to create as a part of your experience.